Daniel had always lived a quiet life on Orbital Station 9. He worked as a repair engineer, fixing broken generators, damaged power lines, and old machines that most people ignored. His apartment was small, filled with spare parts, tools, and half-finished projects. He liked it that way. It kept his mind busy and made him feel useful. On this particular night, he sat on the floor repairing a cracked power unit that someone had thrown out. Sparks popped softly as he tightened a wire. The station outside his window glowed with the soft silver lights of passing ships. He stretched his back, wiped sweat from his forehead, and was about to stand when a strange sound cut through the quiet room. It was like air being ripped in half, a sharp crack that came from behind him. He turned fast, thinking maybe a machine exploded. But what he saw froze him in place. A bright white light appeared in the middle of his room. It expanded like a swirling bubble, its surface flashing with blue sparks. Daniel stared, confused and shocked. He had seen teleporters before, but nothing like this. The air felt heavy, as if the whole room was holding its breath. The light grew brighter, almost blinding him, and then, just as suddenly, it cracked open like glass. Someone fell out of it. A girl, no, not exactly human, landed on his floor with a soft thud. She gasped, her whole body trembling. Daniel's eyes went wide. She had no clothes, nothing at all, only glowing markings across her blue-tinted skin. She curled into herself as if confused, in pain, or terrified. Her breathing was fast, almost panicked, and the white light behind her vanished as if it had never been there. Daniel reacted on pure instinct. He rushed forward but slowed down quickly, knowing sudden movements might scare her. He grabbed the blanket from his bed and gently dropped it over her shoulders. The girl flinched at first, but when she realized he meant no harm, she pulled the blanket close and hid herself in it. Her hands shook badly. "It's okay," Daniel said softly. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were large, silver, and full of fear. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice came out as broken whispers. Daniel realized her translator implant, the small glowing disc on her neck, was damaged. She tried again, and this time a few words formed, though heavy with static. "Help, please." Daniel nodded quickly. "I'll help. Just breathe slowly." She didn't seem to understand all his words, but she understood the calm tone. Her breathing eased a little. Daniel brought her a cup of water, and she grabbed it with desperate need, drinking so fast she almost choked. She wiped her mouth with trembling fingers, the glowing markings on her arms flickering weakly. "My name is Daniel," he said gently. "What's your name?" She looked confused for a moment. Then she tapped the damaged translator. It crackled and hissed, but finally, after a few seconds, it projected a shaky voice. "Arila." Daniel repeated the name softly. "Arila? Okay. Arila, can you tell me what happened? Where did you come from?" Her eyes darted around the room. She looked afraid of something. Not Daniel, but something else, something bigger. She held the blanket tighter around herself, trying to stop her shaking. Her hands pressed hard over her heart as if she expected someone to burst through the walls. "Escape," she whispered through the broken translator. "I escaped." Daniel felt a chill run down his back. "From where?" Arila struggled for words. The translator flickered again. "Facility. They wanted to use me. I ran. Teleport malfunction. I did not choose here. It pulled me." Daniel's jaw tightened. She had teleported into his room by accident, probably in desperation. He could see the fear in her eyes, not fear of transportation, but fear of what she had escaped from. He didn't know who they were, but he could guess it wasn't anyone friendly. He moved slowly, keeping his voice soft. "Arila, you're safe right now. You're in my apartment. No one here will hurt you." She stared at him for a long moment. studying his face as if trying to understand what kind of creature he was. Humans were strangers to her. That much he could tell. But something in his calm expression made her shoulders relax just a little. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared across the station. Daniel's heart jumped. It was not the normal safety drill siren. This was a security alert. A red message flashed on his wall screen. Unauthorized teleport energy detected. All residents remain in place. Security teams mobilized. Arila's eyes widened with pure terror. Her markings brightened and dimmed rapidly like warning lights. She whispered something fast, the translator missing every other word. Signal. They track. Teleport trace. They come. Daniel understood enough. She wasn't imagining things. Whoever she escaped from had the technology to track teleport signatures, and they were already searching. He shut off the automatic system in his room, disabling the network access. Then he pulled a metal panel from under his bed and pressed a hidden button. It opened a small hatch in the floor. Arila looked at it with confusion. Daniel pointed inside. Maintenance tunnels, no cameras down there, no scanners either. She hesitated. She was weak, frightened, and unsure if she should trust a human stranger. But Daniel extended his hand, palm open, waiting. He didn't force her. He didn't rush her. He simply waited with gentle patience. Arila stared at his hand for several seconds. Then slowly, she reached out and placed her shaking fingers on his. Her skin felt warm, almost hot, and her glowing markings pulsed faintly. Daniel helped her into the tunnel first. She moved carefully, still wrapped in the blanket, still unsure. When Daniel climbed in behind her, he closed the hatch, shutting out the lights of his apartment. They were now surrounded by darkness except for the soft glow of Arila's markings. The tunnel was narrow and quiet, filled with dust and unused cables. Daniel whispered, "Keep close. The station's security will search every room, but they won't look here." Arila nodded, though her eyes remained full of fear. Her body trembled every time she heard distant footsteps echo through the metal walls. Daniel walked ahead, guiding her deeper into the maze of old tunnels. He knew these paths better than anyone. Most people avoided them, calling them unsafe, but Daniel had spent years exploring them for repairs, learning shortcuts and hidden routes. As they walked, Arila spoke softly. "Why, you help me?" Daniel looked back at her. "Because you needed help. That's enough." She stared at him as if she had never heard such a simple answer before. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe her world didn't offer such kindness. After several minutes, they reached a small side room Daniel often used as a quiet workshop. Tools and spare machine parts covered the shelves. Arila sank to the floor, exhausted. Daniel handed her a bottle of water and some emergency ration bars. She ate slowly this time, her breathing calming. Daniel knelt beside her. "Your translator is badly damaged. Can I try to repair it?" Arila hesitated, then lowered the blanket slightly to show the device on her neck. Daniel worked gently, using a small screwdriver and a glowing diagnostic tool. Arila sat perfectly still, trusting him despite what she had been through. That trust made Daniel more careful than ever. As he worked, he noticed the markings on her skin began to dim, like a fading light, as if her energy reserves were low. It worried him, but he didn't say anything yet. When he finally finished, he stepped back. "Try speaking now." Arila touched her throat. "Can you hear me?" Her voice came out clear, almost musical. Daniel smiled. "Much better." Arila's expression softened for the first time. She looked around the small workshop. "You are kind. My people say humans are dangerous, unpredictable, selfish. But you—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You protect someone you do not know." Daniel shrugged lightly. "Sometimes strangers need help more than anyone." She lowered her eyes, touched by the thought. But before she could say more, a heavy boom echoed in the distance. Security teams were sweeping through the lower decks. Arila flinched, gripping the blanket tight. Daniel whispered urgently, "We can't stay here. They're getting close." Arila stood slowly, still weak but determined. Daniel grabbed his toolkit and motioned for her to follow. She nodded. Together they slipped deeper into the tunnels, the glow of her markings lighting the path. Outside, alarms continued to echo across the entire station. The hunters were coming, and Daniel knew this strange girl had brought more danger than he had ever faced in his quiet life. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He couldn't abandon her. Not now. Not ever. Daniel moved fast through the dim maintenance tunnels, guiding Arila deeper into the older sections of the station. The alarms above them echoed like distant thunder. Every vibration in the metal walls made Arila tense and pressed the blanket closer around herself. Her glowing markings flickered faintly in the dark, giving Daniel just enough light to see the narrow path ahead. He kept his voice calm whenever he spoke, even though he was scared too. Not for himself, but for her. They reached a junction where the tunnels split in 3 directions. Daniel paused and listened carefully. He had lived on this station for years and understood how sound traveled through the pipes and walls. He heard footsteps above them, heavy metallic boots, security teams, or something worse. Arila took a shaky breath. "They are close," she whispered, her newly repaired translator making her voice clearer and gentler. "I know," Daniel replied quietly, "but they haven't found this level yet. We still have time." Arila nodded, though fear stayed in her eyes. Daniel motioned to the left path. "This way. There's an old workshop down here. We can hide for a little while and I can fix your equipment better." She followed him without hesitation now. The trust she had begun to show earlier had grown stronger. Each step she took behind him was quieter, more certain, even though her body was still weak. The blanket she wrapped herself in dragged slightly on the ground, but Daniel didn't comment. She had nothing else to wear. He wished he could help more, but for now, safety came before comfort. After several minutes of walking, they reached a forgotten maintenance room. Rusted metal shelves lined the walls, and old machines lay scattered in broken piles. Daniel quickly checked that no sensors or scanners were active. Everything was dead. Perfect. "You can sit," he said softly. Arila lowered herself onto an overturned crate. She looked tired, more tired than she was letting on. The glowing lines on her arms had dimmed almost to nothing. Daniel crouched beside her. "Your markings," he said. "They're getting weaker. Does that mean you're injured?" She touched her arm gently. "Not injured. Energy low." "Energy?" "My species. We absorb heat and light. It gives us strength. Inside that place I escaped from, they drained me again and again. I used too much power during the teleport." Daniel felt anger rise inside him, not at Arila, but at whoever had done this to her. "They drained you? For what?" Arila hesitated. Then she looked down. "Weapon tests." Daniel clenched his jaw. "They used you as a battery." She nodded slowly. "For months, maybe longer." I lost track of time. Daniel wanted to say something, but the words stuck in his throat. The idea of someone treating her like a tool made him sick. He stood and moved to a dusty workbench. "You need energy," he said. "This room has old heating units. I can try to power one up." Arila watched him quietly while he worked. Daniel opened a broken unit, replaced a few wires, and connected it to a portable battery he carried. The unit hummed softly and released a gentle wave of warmth. Arila's markings reacted instantly. Faint blue light spread through them like someone pouring water into dry cracks. She let out a soft breath of relief. "That helps," she whispered. Daniel smiled a little. Good. But their moment of calm didn't last. A deep, metallic echo shook the tunnel outside. The sound was unmistakable. Heavy armored boots. Getting closer. Daniel instantly shut off the heating unit, plunging the room back into darkness. Arela froze, her markings dimming again. They listened together, holding their breaths. "Stay here," Daniel whispered. "Don't make a sound." Arela reached out suddenly and grabbed his hand. "Daniel, if they find you because of me—" "They won't," he whispered firmly. "Just stay quiet." He squeezed her hand once before gently pulling away and moving toward the door. He didn't open it. Instead, he lowered himself onto the floor and pressed his ear to the cold metal. The footsteps moved past their room, slow but steady. These weren't normal security officers. Their pace was too deliberate, too controlled. They moved like hunters. Arela whispered from behind him, "They are not human." Daniel looked back at her. "Who are they?" "Guards," she said softly. "Genetically changed, strong, fast, loyal, and they want you back." "Yes." Footsteps faded into the distance. Daniel waited a little longer before standing. "We can't stay here long. They'll sweep this area soon." Arela nodded weakly. Daniel walked back to the workbench and began pulling tools from his bag. "I'm going to build something," he said. "Something that can hide your energy signature better. If they can't track you, their search slows down." Arela tilted her head slightly. "You can do that?" Daniel shrugged. "I can try." He worked fast, his hands moving with practiced confidence. He used small metal plates, an old circuit board, and a short-range signal scrambler. He soldered wires together, adjusted power levels, and combined everything into a small device that looked like a metal band. Arela watched him with fascination. "You build quickly." "Fixing broken things is my job," he said, "and right now, your signal is the most important thing to fix." She looked down at herself. "I am the broken thing." Daniel shook his head sharply. "No, not you. What they did to you, that's what needs fixing." Arela blinked slowly, her expression softening in a way that made her look almost fragile. When Daniel finished the device, he approached her carefully. "This should help. It won't block your energy completely, but it will scramble it, just long enough to confuse their sensors." He placed the metal band around her wrist gently. When it clicked shut, Arela felt a soft vibration through her arm. Her markings flickered, then stabilized. "It feels calm," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "Good. That means it's working." Suddenly the room shook again, harder this time. Daniel grabbed the wall to steady himself. Dust fell from the ceiling. Arela gasped softly. "What was that?" Daniel whispered. Arela closed her eyes, listening with senses Daniel didn't understand. "A docking. Forceful. They brought reinforcements." Daniel cursed under his breath. "We need to go. Now." Arela stood, still wrapped in the blanket. Daniel grabbed his toolkit and opened a small hatch in the corner of the room. This one led even deeper into the station, into the forgotten lower levels that only engineers ever entered. "Watch your step," he whispered. Arela followed him down a narrow ladder. Her bare feet made soft sounds against the metal. The air grew colder the deeper they went, but it was safer than the levels above. As they walked, Daniel noticed Arela's breathing was uneven. "Are you all right?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "Just tired, but I will keep going." "You don't have to push yourself so hard," Daniel said softly. "We'll find a safe place soon." Arela looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting his dim flashlight. "You risk so much for me. Why?" Daniel hesitated before answering. "Because what they did to you is wrong. Because you didn't choose any of this. And because I couldn't live with myself if I let them take you back. Arila stared at him for a long, silent moment. Something warm flickered in her eyes, something like hope, something she might not have felt in a long time. After walking for nearly 20 minutes, they reached a sealed door. Daniel typed a code into the panel. The door opened slowly, revealing a small emergency pod hidden between thick pipes. Arila looked at it with surprise. A pod? Yes. One they forgot to decommission, Daniel explained. If we launch it, we can escape the station before they find us. Arila stepped inside, touching the metal walls gently. Have you used one before? No, Daniel admitted. But I've repaired a few. She gave a small, tired smile. Then I trust you. Daniel climbed inside and closed the hatch. He activated the control panel, praying that the old system still worked. Lights flickered. The pod shook. Then it hummed to life. But Arila suddenly grabbed his arm. They know, she whispered. I feel them. They are coming here. Daniel gripped the controls. Then we leave fast. Outside, someone pounded on the door. The sound echoed through the pod. Arila's markings brightened with fear. Daniel slammed the launch button. The pod broke free from the station with a violent jolt. Arila fell against him. Daniel wrapped one arm around her to keep her steady as the pod shot into open space. The hunters were behind them, but for now, they had escaped. And neither of them knew what waited on the other side of the void. The escape pod shot through space like a silver bullet, leaving Orbital Station 9 behind. Inside the cramped cabin, Daniel held the rail tightly while Arila leaned against him, breathing hard. The sudden launch had shaken her weakened body more than she expected. Her markings glowed faintly, trying to stabilize, but exhaustion kept pulling them down to a soft, dim blue. Daniel looked at her with worry. Are you all right? Arila nodded slowly. Just tired. My energy is almost empty. Daniel wished he could do more. He wished he could give her warmth, light, or anything that might help recharge her strength. But the pod was dark and cold, running on emergency power only. They had no control over direction. The pod was programmed to fly toward the nearest safe zone. He checked the navigation panel. We'll reach an old cargo outpost in a few minutes. It's abandoned, but we might find something useful there. Arila lifted her head and tried to study the screen. Will they follow? Yes, Daniel said honestly. But the signal scrambler slows them down. They might not know exactly where we're going. Her fingers tightened around the metal band he had built for her. She whispered softly, You saved me again. Daniel shook his head. I only did what anyone should do. Arila gave him a small, gentle look. Not everyone would help a stranger, especially one who brings danger. Daniel opened his mouth to reply, but the pod shook violently as it entered the outpost's gravity field. Warning lights flashed. Arila grabbed his arm for balance. The pod dropped fast, hitting the metal landing bay with a heavy clang that echoed through the cold chamber. The doors opened automatically, releasing a wave of dusty air. Daniel jumped out first and helped Arila step onto the platform. The outpost was dark except for a few flickering lights. It smelled like old wires, rusted machines, and forgotten cargo. This place is old, Arila whispered, looking around with cautious eyes. It's not used anymore, Daniel said. That's why it's the perfect hiding place. He supported Arila as they walked deeper into the outpost. Every step she took seemed slower than the last. Her markings barely glowed now. Daniel gently lowered her onto a nearby crate. I'll find heat sources, he said. You need energy. Arila nodded, but reached for his wrist before he could leave. Be careful. They are close. Their minds, I can feel them searching. Daniel blinked. You can sense them? Yes. Faintly, like shadows moving behind walls. She shivered. They hate silence. They hunt through fear. Daniel placed his hand briefly over hers. Then don't be afraid. I'll be right back. He searched the outpost quickly, moving through dusty corridors. Old cargo crates were stacked everywhere. Broken machines lay scattered like skeletons. After several minutes, he found a working heat coil buried under scrap metal. He dragged it back to Arela, connected it to an old battery, and slowly the coil began to glow warm red. Arela immediately leaned toward the heat. Her markings responded almost instantly, brightening in slow pulses. Color returned to her cheeks. She sighed softly, a sound full of relief. "This helps," she whispered. "Thank you." Daniel sat beside her, keeping an eye on the shadows around them. "We should find supplies," he said, "and maybe repair a few things to set traps." Arela looked at him curiously. "Traps?" "They'll track the pod eventually," Daniel said. "We need time to escape again." Arela studied him with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "You think like a warrior." Daniel shook his head. "I'm an engineer, but sometimes fixing things and fighting aren't very different." She smiled, small, tired, but genuine. Then she closed her eyes and let the heat fill her. Daniel stood quietly and began gathering broken equipment from around the outpost. He found wires, metal scraps, and parts from old mining drones. Slowly, he built simple devices, pressure alarms, noise traps, and small shock systems. Arela opened her eyes and watched him work. "You risk everything for someone you met by accident." Daniel continued, tightening a bolt. "It wasn't an accident. You came to me because you needed help." "No," she said softly. "I came to you because the teleport failed. You chose to help." Daniel didn't argue. He didn't know how to say the truth out loud, that leaving her alone would have felt like abandoning someone who trusted him without even knowing why. As Arela regained some strength, she moved closer, watching him build more traps. "Your mind. It is full of pathways," she said, "like a machine room. I can almost see the pieces fitting together." Daniel chuckled quietly. "I think a lot, sometimes too much." "It saved us," she said simply. They worked side by side. Arela helped him adjust energy levels in some of the devices using tiny sparks of her fading power. Daniel was careful never to push her too hard. Every time she breathed heavily, he made her rest. Hours passed like this. Silent cooperation, soft breathing, the distant hum of forgotten machines. Then everything changed. A deep, thunderous vibration shook the outpost floor. Arela stiffened immediately. Her markings flickered sharply. "They're here," she whispered with fear tightening her voice. "They found us." Daniel grabbed her hand. "Stay behind me." The heavy metal doors at the far end of the outpost rattled with force. Daniel pushed Arela gently behind a row of crates and whispered, "Wait for my signal." She nodded reluctantly. Suddenly, the doors were ripped open from the outside. A tall figure stepped in, armored, broad-shouldered, and strangely silent. Its visor glowed red. Two more followed. They moved with unnatural precision. Arela trembled. "Those are them, Guardians, engineered to obey." Daniel swallowed hard. He pressed a button on a small device in his hand. A loud explosion of sound burst from the far side of the room, one of Daniel's traps. The Guardians turned instantly toward the noise. Daniel used the distraction to move closer to Arela. "You ready?" She nodded weakly. "I will try, but my power is still low." "Just stay close," Daniel whispered. "I'll handle the rest." He triggered another trap, a shower of sparks that blinded two Guardians. Arela seized the moment. She raised her hand and released a small wave of light strong enough to stun them momentarily. It wasn't enough to defeat them, but it bought time. The leader stepped forward, ignoring the sparks. Its voice echoed coldly through its helmet. "Return the asset." Daniel clenched his fists. "She's not an asset." "She is property," the Guardian said flatly. "Designed for energy extraction. Return her now." Arila's voice trembled. "Daniel, go, please. They only want me." Daniel stepped in front of her. "I'm not leaving you." The Guardian moved lightning fast, grabbing Daniel by the collar and lifting him off the ground. Arila screamed, and her markings flared bright for a moment. The heat coil behind her glowed hotter. Daniel struggled, but the Guardian's strength was overwhelming. "Human," it said coldly. "You interfere with the facility's property. You will be removed." Arila's fear broke into something sharper. She rose, shaky but determined. "Put him down!" Her markings surged with a burst of bright blue light. The energy gathered in her palms. It wasn't as strong as she once could generate, but it was fueled by something deeper: fear, anger, and something Daniel had earned from her: trust. She released the blast. It hit the Guardian square in the chest, throwing it backward. Daniel fell to the ground, gasping for breath. Arila stumbled, nearly collapsing from the effort, but Daniel grabbed her before she fell. "You did it," he whispered. The other two Guardians recovered and rushed forward. Daniel triggered the last trap, a high-pressure steam burst that forced them to retreat a few steps. Arila gathered the last of her strength. Her hands glowed again, brighter this time, feeding on the heat around her. "Together," she whispered. Daniel nodded. They moved as one. Daniel activated the machinery around them, shaking the outpost with noise, heat, and light. Arila timed her energy bursts with his traps. The Guardians grew disoriented, their sensors overloaded. Their strength meant nothing when they couldn't see, hear, or predict anything. Finally, Arila released one last wave of energy, soft enough not to kill, but strong enough to knock them unconscious. The outpost echoed with silence. Arila breathed heavily, collapsing into Daniel's arms. He caught her quickly. "Easy. You're safe." She looked up at him, her silver eyes soft and warm. "You saved me again. And again." "We saved each other," Daniel said with a small smile. She rested her head against his chest, exhausted but relieved. "Where do we go now?" Daniel looked toward the far hallway that led to the outpost's control room. "Anywhere you want. We're free." Arila closed her eyes. "Then I want to stay with you, if you will let me." Daniel brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I'm not going anywhere without you." They stood together, surrounded by the quiet remains of the battle. For the first time since Arila had teleported into his room, the danger had passed. The galaxy was still wide and uncertain, but they would face it together, not as strangers, not as fugitives, but as two souls who had found each other in the middle of chaos. And for the first time, Arila felt something she had never known before: hope.